All right, this is the episodes of the Takeover Survivor by Joe himself. No, this is episode number 60. And I guess with a round number comes change. So we personally just want to, I know Joe and I personally just want to give a huge shout out to Alexandra and the Jeff Lutz. Um, so they have been such a huge part of this podcast. So huge shout out to them. I thank you so much. We saw both of them this past week, and much love to both of the fact that of all the stuff that they're doing. So, but with that, we are pleased to announce on episode 60 two new faces. I think let's introduce probably the most familiar on our channel that has stepped in a decent amount. Let's introduce Hans first. Hans, welcome back to the beat. But as you know, your face will become more regular here. And then My Tesla Weekend, or now FutureAza. What's up, Brian? How's it going?
In the house. I'm excited to be here. This is a lot of fun, you guys. Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah, well, let's kick it to Hans. Hans, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Obviously, people probably in the space know you pretty well, but just tell us a little bit about, the channel that you run, your expertise in the Tesla community or with Tesla, and just really even because the stuff you do is outside of Tesla as well.
Yeah, so I mean, people who do know who I am probably encountered me through Farzad's podcast. That's kind of where I came up. And I have a degree in mechanical engineering, but I haven't done a whole lot with that. But I just love to explore disruptive innovation. And that's what brought me to Tesla in roughly 2018. And I've been an investor since then and just really followed the company very closely, and then got into content creation and podcasting a couple years back now, and have just kind of been on that journey ever since. I do regular podcasts with Farzad 1 to 2 times a week usually, and then I also have my own YouTube channel and an X profile as well, where I share some stuff. Usually right now it's clips, trying to figure out what the direction of that channel is going to be long term for more original content. But right now it's just kind of a collection of clips from interviews with Farzad or discussions with Herbert or some of the other long form things. Probably we'll be able to find some shorter clips of things we're doing here as well in the near future. So just a collection of things like that for people who want more 15-minute things, since a lot of what I do is anywhere from an hour to 2, sometimes even longer, in the long format, which I really enjoy.
Well, awesome. Thank you for giving your time and becoming a host on this show. So, all right, let's kick it to Brian. Brian, you've been in the community for a very long time, probably one of the most, if not the most accurate forecaster on your delivery numbers, especially shout out to the last one. I mean, you killed it on that one. But tell us a little bit about, My Tesla Weekend and the transition to FutureAza and just kind of your focus of your channel.
So the transition was pretty. I had different handles on every platform, so I had to unify that, and so I needed something that said future technology, innovation, something like that. And I just used a domain spinner for hours and hours until I found something that was good and also available. So the name change, people have wisely observed that the channel has not changed. But I also found that with Tesla in the name, and Rob Maurer had said this years ago, that when you put Tesla in the name, it closes a lot of doors for you, because GM doesn't want to share their electric insights with someone with Tesla in the name. And the having Tesla in the name didn't actually open the Tesla door for me. So at that point, I was like, well, what am I doing here? So I started by doing comparisons of the factories, side-by-side video comparisons, which are an incredible amount of work to do, but I wanted to make the kind of content I wanted to see. And then and then I would started doing projections of when Giga Texas would be finished, when there was only about 30 columns vertical, not even the foundation was fully in yet. I made a model that would allow me to try and predict when it would be finished. And I tracked it weekly until it was. And I got to within about 2 weeks. It was pretty crazy. And people said, because I am not a contractor, I couldn't possibly know. And it's like, well, yeah, but I know spreadsheets. And so that's worked out well. And in terms of the quarterly production, yeah, I've been very accurate. And I'm rarely in the pack. I don't look at other people's numbers before I make my numbers. So I always think I'm going to be right in the middle of the pack, and I'm usually an outlier. And a number of times when I've been the outlier, I've been the most accurate. And one time I was the least accurate. James Stevenson and I had a good laugh over that because we were at the opposite ends of the spectrum on that quarter. The big thing I do is not just obsessively read, but I also get out of the studio constantly. Since May, I've been home about 10 days since the beginning of May. I went to the X Takeover in Austria. I went to a road trip all the way out to Michigan, back down through the Southwest and up back to my home in the Pacific Northwest. And then I went to Monterrey, Mexico to actually get boots on the ground and see where that factory is going to be built, understand the Chinese vehicles in Mexico, see what kind of market share they've got, see what kind of public perception they have, and then get up to, and then I went down to, of course, the X Takeover last week. And so I've put 20,000 miles on my 8-month-old Tesla, and I'm loving it. So there's, the big thing is I love to gather experts. I love to meet people and find out what they know, because a disproportionate percentage of my viewer base is current and retired engineers from all different kinds of walks of life. So I've had a chance to interview power plant engineers, both in coal and nuclear, to understand some of the obstacles we're facing in the green transition. And while neither of them are interested in going on camera, they're happy to be on speed dial when I have questions that I can't answer. So that's a big advantage, I think. Yeah.
Well, we're excited to tap into both of your knowledge along with Hans's. You guys are such a staple in the community and bring amazing perspectives to. So we're excited to tap into that each week. All right, let's just a quick, here's a quick look at the stock again. It did hit, 250, 260 at one point, even higher, as close to, even 270s. But, it is down a little bit, but as we know, it's had a huge recovery since really the beginning of the year, not down like it was at certain points. But the big thing that we wanted to talk about was, because there were some good updates. I think, I don't know if Joe, if you want to kick us off on, your recap, and then obviously we had Brian, you were there as a speaker. Hans, we need to get you in at some point, but
Definitely.
I don't know if you saw some of the interviews or covered them on any of the shows this week, but would love to get, if you were able to, we can get your recap and then I can close out with us.
Sure.
Joe, to you.
Yeah. I didn't do anything this past weekend. Couch potato guy, you know what I mean? I live this life. No, Takeover was pretty incredible. I brought my family down. It was amazing, as it usually is. So I think, like we were talking about this before we got on air, there, not knowing what was going to happen both days, you just kind of want to take in both days just in case. And shout out to everybody who put the hard work in and everybody who decided to be a part of it. I mean, it was like a struggle, as some people know, some people don't know, but like it's been, we start this like the day after Takeover last year. So the planning is like nonstop for us. And then like started getting into the final months and it was like, what's happening? And then like, it just all came to a head and it was awesome. But I really like the community coming together for this, the people who came out and what they were able to experience and enjoy, just being able to get products hands-on and being able to have installs done right away. I mean, there's a lot of people that see these products and things like that and see the people and stuff like that online, but being able to interact with Brian in person and, and a lot of these people like Jeff and Alexandra and even like Ellie in space and everything, it was pretty awesome to watch people like, oh my God, there's so and so. Oh my God, there's Ryan McCaffrey. Oh my God, there's Kim Jong. You know, I mean, it was like it's pretty special when you can get everybody together for real life things. So I thought that was really awesome. I had a really good time.
One quick question to you: was there anything from the keynote speakers, from Franz and Elon, and even maybe Jared, that kind of stuck out to you? Anything that they said that kind of sparked or jogged your mind?
I'll tell you from Franz specifically, I like that he said he doesn't need a truck, but he finds himself driving the Cybertruck every day. When you guys asked him like what's his favorite vehicle, and usually his go-to answer is the next one, but he was very honest in saying that he can't help but get in the Cybertruck every single day. So I thought that was pretty cool. And hearing Jared talk about the suits, like testing of the suits, is like pretty incredible. That was a whole thing. You know, it's funny watching Elon speak. You think like, oh man, because I mean, we're in the weeds, right? We watch everything and we soak it all in. But when he's comfortable and when he really likes people, he just speaks. You know what I mean? Like that was supposed to be a 5-minute conversation, which turned into an hour. And I mean, and he really enjoyed himself. I mean, you can see like all the media outlets picking up on all the little tidbits of things that he dropped. And it was just like amazing to hear about the freaking Optimus and Semi and production of the robotaxi. I mean, just everything was the whole thing was like incredible. So.
All right, Brian.
Hans wasn't there though. Hans wasn't there.
Yeah, so the weekend is always going to be great. So I love, of course, I go to all the little fairs and festivals and car shows and everything, but the booths were awesome. There's so much cool stuff to check out and look at. And, a third of it's not going to be for you, and a third of it's going to be okay, and a third of it's going to be right up your alley. And there were live demos of sound systems, and there were booths. You like this little TV screen for the back seat? We can install it right now over in the parking lot. There's tents over there set up for a handful of vendors who had brought enough supply to make it happen. It was awesome. The big thing is what John was saying. When Elon realizes that he's in a place that he likes, he'll stay. It takes me back to the whole Starship debut when Tim Dodd was out there, and Elon's people said, okay, there's a lot of media here. You get 5 minutes. Everybody gets 5 minutes. And then Tim Dodd started asking the good questions, the real questions, the right questions. And Elon's like, we can go another 5, and he must have spent 40 minutes. And those other reporters are just sitting there just stewing, just thinking, come on, man, we're all waiting. Yeah, of course you are. Come up with better questions, and next time it'll be you. So it was great to see Elon loosen up and remember that that we are the people that most need to hear from him. And I thought it was also great because if you guys out there have seen any of the recent Elon interviews, he likes to give interviews to people who do not ask any kind of business questions, no technical stuff. And I think that's in part to protect trade secrets, proprietary information. And then he gets in front of somebody who actually knows how the company's work, knows what to ask. And he's like, well, these are good questions and I haven't answered them yet. So if you want the hottest, freshest news, go to where it's being made. Get your boots on the ground yourself. And it's a lot of fun. And I can't recommend it highly enough.
One last thing. Was there anything that was said from some of the keynotes that kind of like you walked away with that were like, I don't know, maybe that you covered even this past week that you walked away with?
Yes, but the real trick is it was all of that. It was too many things to even really go into. I mean, well, it's like
all good.
Yeah. It's like what's your favorite part of AI Day 2? It's like there's oh my gosh, where do we start? So I would say, but really to me the best thing, and the part that can't be conveyed by going back and watching the videos. And if you haven't watched Jared's or Franz's or Elon's keynotes, it's not that much time and it's so densely packed. The biggest thing for all of those is the atmosphere in the room. And I don't just mean the room, because sometimes you'll get a shot that shows the room. What it doesn't show is the overflow outside the room, because the room extends, it's open walls and people are just packed in around it. And I can only imagine the people driving by on the highway seeing not just a tent, but people swarming around a tent. Must have really wondered what was going on in there.
Definitely. All right, Hans, was there, I know, again, you were not able to make it this year, but was there anything that you either saw in the interviews or anything else that you saw, even from X? I assume your X feed was just all X Takeover. But what were your thoughts from anything that was either said or that you saw?
Well, first of all, I'll answer that question, but I did just want to, give a huge shout out to you guys for doing the hard work, because like you said, it takes a whole year to put on an event like this. And while I didn't get to attend the X Takeover this year, I've met both of you, Joe and John, at in-person events in Austin, and I like those Tesla in-person events are really unique, and there's nothing quite like them when you get to bring people together from all around, not just the country, but the world, to have conversations around understanding this very unique person, and whether it's Tesla or just the overall different number of companies that Elon's involved in. And I really really enjoyed those in-person experiences. They are, I would say, an order of magnitude more meaningful than just, purely interacting with all of this information online through X or through YouTube or through whichever social media platform, which is, great. And it allows us to have this global ongoing conversation almost 24/7 between all of these different great people who look at it from different perspectives. And so, I love that part of it, but then bringing that into an in-person experience is amazing. But like you said, it takes so much work to facilitate. And so, yeah, just mad respect and props for the people who are willing to put in the effort and the work to make those in-person experiences possible. Really love what you guys do there. So then to come back and answer your question, I think that some of the biggest things that just stood out from the bits and pieces of things that I've seen were both Franz and Elon's comments around obviously the design of Robotaxi, and kind of teasing what it is that we're in for here on 1010, and the ideas of having a tiny mobile lounge and all of the things that they're going to do to facilitate people um, being able to have, their time back and use it in any number of, a variety of ways while they're being transported from place to place with their own personal chauffeur, but in a vehicle that isn't necessarily constrained by the form factor that cars have always had to be. And so, I think the best teases that we have from existing vehicles are going to be probably something more like limousines. And so then you get your mind just going in that direction. How big is this vehicle? Like, is it a tiny, tiny limousine, or is it a little bit larger limousine, and the different form factors of what you could do, and what it feels like to be in that space. I think we'll get so much more information on this here very soon, hopefully. But yeah, I really enjoyed their comments on those things, and I haven't got to watch full interviews on anything yet, but I'm looking forward to doing that for both Elon and for Franz, and then also for Jared, because I mean, y'all, like, to line up that those three speakers all
Oh
for
my,
the X Takeover. Holy smokes! Like, that is the coup
oh
de grace on keynotes there. So just mad props for that.
yeah, yeah. And this year, I'm gonna make a quick, 1 minute video on this. This year, and that's why, for you guys that were there and saw it, like, I was pretty emotional this past year. One, because this year would have been the year to flop on this event, which is insane. I mean, you guys saw the final production, but we were up against a horrible economy. Everyone you talk to, vendors, sponsors, like, typically they'll buy the higher packages. You weren't seeing that. You were also, there was just there wasn't as much support necessarily. There was just some drama that obviously happened in the past year. So, and so you have all that, and it's just more of like, bad economy, divisiveness. It's just like, this would have been the year that, potentially this could flop, and this is your last year, right? And obviously I'm not making any statements about next year, but all I'm trying to say is everything that could have gone wrong should have gone wrong. Even leading into it, and I shared this about, I share this going into it. It's, you have an astronaut who invites an astronaut to an event, literally a live astronaut. And he's like, hey, I might be in space. I might not be in space. So I kid you not, if you bought a ticket, you're probably like, what is going on? He's like coming. He's not coming virtual in person. He's coming virtually. And then he is coming. It's like, what, did he go to space and come back fast? And then, unfortunately, I think Franz had some personal matters that were happening. And so it was in person to virtual. So now you have two virtual speakers. And so, there was a Hail Mary for me. And thankfully, a lot of this is kudos just to, this is not bragging, but like, we've built a lot over 6 years. And so it was precious for me to be able to reach out to Elon and just to kind of tell him what was going on. And like I said, he said 5 minutes, and next thing you know, you guys saw what happened. So, and that puts us on record now for 5 straight hours with him over the collective of 2 interviews. So, and we're, at the end of the day, fans, retail investor, whatever you want to call us, and that has to be some type of record. But, just to have all of that happen, like to be honest, it's just beyond me. The whole thing is just beyond me. And Joe, a lot of it, because you saw over the past year, you saw the tears, the blood, sweat, tears, so same thing with Kelvin. So that's why, what we put on was obviously the best, but that's not how it felt leading into it. It felt like, I don't know, lashes as I'm like going into it, but so for me, it was so special. The whole thing, I didn't feel like I was really feeling the virtual aspect of having some of these speakers, especially before Elon came into the mix, was going to kind of really dampen the experience. It didn't disappoint, honestly. Especially, you might even be able to get better speakers that way. Everyone's telling me that, like, it actually might be better that way, just to do virtual, because you can draw in better speakers to come and speak. Obviously, there's that in-person aspect where people can do the meet and greet, but coming to SLO is kind of can be a thing where you have to like fly in and then take an extra leg from LAX, and people that are coming from far, it's a long flight. All that to say, so I just want to say thank you to vendors, sponsors, speakers, like all of you that came out, attendees. And then, I think for me, if you actually watch the live stream, you'll notice like when I was opening up for Elon, I had, and this is, I'll just be even more transparent. I did not see any questions, or we did not give him any questions beforehand. So I literally, Kelvin handed me like 12 questions. I saw the 12 questions and I was like, this is not it. So I'm like up there, like, either way, I had already like had a outline, because I did talk, and kind of share the vision with his camp on like what the interview would be about. So I just Starship launch, and then to be honest, it kind of just became a whole vibe. And so, and then same thing with Franz. Franz was great as well, just to get his his expertise, and then Jared too, just talking to his inspiration as a kid, and he's now living that as a dream. So I think the things that stuck out to me, I mean, you called it out, Hans, is the tiny mini or the tiny mobile lounge. I think that starts to really change your mindset on what the future is going to look like. I think he joked that, Peter Thiel had been like, why don't we have flying cars? Wait a minute. Like, all the stuff that they're doing. And then the fact, technically, I guess this was because no one knew when the Roadster was going to come. Was it going to be a new demo, a new unveil? Like, but it sounds like, they'll probably do something similar to the Plaid Day, obviously, which is like, where they invite a bunch of people and then they demo it and probably rides and all that other stuff. So that's happening next year. And then just seeing this guy just talk about robotics and the hand, and really, I would say like the total addressable market. He literally was doing the calculations. We even got to ask him what he would do with his bot. What he would do with his personal bot, but just the possibilities with this robot are limitless. Everyone's going to want a bot, kind of like he kind of made this Star Wars reference of like, how can you not be close to like an R2D2 or something else? So it's really, so the whole experience was just, knowing all of that, put all the work kind of going in over the year with our team to like landing that. And then to kind of just, I'm still on this high because I think, when I landed the interview with Elon 2 years ago, you never think if you're going to do it again, but, it's still just that, just knowing how he's doing, obviously doing a little bit more interviews now, but this was his base and core. That's why I ended the actual interview with, hey, what do retail investors mean to you? And, I wanted to kind of like bring it all home on like, cause this is his base as FutureAza was saying. And so, it was pretty emotional for me just because, again, it's not about getting like patting myself on the back, but for every reason that should have happened, this should have gone differently. And it was in some cases, right? But for our community and the people, like almost 1,400 paid adults, that's just crazy. And ultimately what that says is that, our club and, with the help of Joe and his organizations too, it's like, we're the draw, we're the ones bringing people versus, and so that was just kind of, again, it's not knowing that, what it could have been too, if we had unification potentially and not divisiveness, it's like even more mind blowing. But for us, it was great. Like, so sorry to get all emotional and stuff, but yeah, that's kind of like a little bit behind the scenes of what happened. All right. So Takeover happened. It was amazing. But back into the regular updates. So Tesla just dropped this literally this morning. The first prototype Cybertruck with in-house dry cathode 4680 cells, making it the first, making it an all-dry electrode vehicle. So that's crazy. But what are your thoughts on this? I'm wondering if I was like, man, I should have waited for my Cybertruck. I could have gotten a dry electrode vehicle. But my question to you guys is like, how significant is this? What comes to mind when you saw this this picture drop?
So I'll jump in first on this one because this is where I get excited. So should you have waited? No. In terms of what you're getting, it's going to be the same battery, the same performance, all that. If for some reason they were able to squeak out a little bit of extra performance, they would just reduce the battery pack size so they could make more trucks on the same supply. This is exciting from the back end, from the financial side, because Herbert asked me the other day, what is the actual benefit to dry versus a wet process? And the wet process is, it takes a bunch of space. You literally are adding a wet mixture to the material, and then you have to dry it. So how do you dry it? Well, you do it in an oven that is hundreds, if not thousands of feet long. And that oven costs a tremendous amount of space. It costs a tremendous amount of equipment. You need all the ovens. It costs energy, huge amounts of energy to actually do this drying. And then the worst part of all is all of the things that evaporate off of it are volatile organic compounds that have to be captured, whether for reuse or just safe disposal. You can't just vent them into the air. That'd be terrible. It'd be a bad idea. So you're saving space, you're saving time because they can be manufactured more quickly, and you're saving money, you're saving labor to keep all those machines running that you no longer need. And yeah, it is a win on every level from the financial side. Now, does that mean they're actually going to be cheaper than the Chinese batteries? Well, that's the hope. We're not sure yet. For now, the battery manufacturing credit remains in place, and it is quite generous, making U.S.-made batteries very cost competitive with Chinese competitors. If you can build batteries in the U.S. right now, it is cheaper to do so than to try and get them from somewhere else when you factor in that credit. And that means your vehicle's just cheaper when you go to sell it. So there's nothing but upsides on this, certainly from the financial side. And now all we have to do is make sure that they're validated and will not result in a large recall because of some tiny little thing that was overlooked. But they've made so much progress on this front, and that's been the big delay in the batteries, that they weren't trying to change a thing. Just updating the chemistry, you can do that no problem. Updating any other big parts of the process, every one of them adds time, it adds complication, and they were updating the chemistry, the form factor, the entire process of making the electrode and the cathode. And I mean, at that point, it's a whole new everything. And any problem at any one of those steps can hold the whole thing up, which is what we saw. So yeah.
Question:
And
Would
then
you know? Would you know off the top of your head how much could this save? Is this like wet versus dry?
I don't know. And the difference is, if you want to make the electrodes in the wet process, you need a factory the size of Giga Nevada. And even
Yeah.
Giga Nevada is very compact for the output that it delivers. Um, the real savings comes in the less times you have to move things. I helped a friend move once, who said, we're going to take all the stuff, we're going to pack it to the living room, then we're going to pack it to the curb, then the curb to the truck, and then someone in the truck will stack it. I said, no, 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 you touch everything once. That is economy. And so what I always point out is the reason Tesla likes to optimize as aggressively as they do. When you're looking at a factory that makes, we don't need to really remove this support beam, for example. Just take a warehouse and start building cars in there. What you end up with is Fremont, as opposed to Giga Berlin, Nevada, or Shanghai. If you can remove just $50 from the car and you're going to make 1 million cars a year, that's $500 million over 10 years you just saved. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. So if they can, so I don't know, we don't know enough about the actual equipment, the actual process. Some people at Cyber Rodeo were able to glimpse a bit of equipment, but it was so early, such early days, that we don't actually know what all the things are on the back end. But if the product works, there's no reason to believe that the original promises of vastly cheaper batteries that were suggested at Battery Day aren't already poised to come true.
Hans.
Yeah, I actually got to speak to Jordan Giesecke from The Limiting Factor on this topic this week, and he was estimating that the cost savings, as they get to scale, he's thinking that they're probably paying about $100 per kilowatt hour right now for the cells that they were manufacturing with the LG Chem cathode that was a wet process cathode that they were importing. But he thinks that, once we scale up in-house dry production, that we can get that price down to $70 per kilowatt hour, which is pretty good for a nickel-based cell as opposed to a lithium iron phosphate-based cell, especially when, like Brian alluded to, you layer in some of the IRA tax incentives that we have for U.S. manufacture of cells. That basically gets your cost well below 50 after you layer those in. But who knows whether those will still be around once we get full, ramp up of the dry cathode. So, and the other benefit that Tesla gets from this that Brian didn't mention that I can add here is just because it's, less energy, less floor space and all that stuff, it means it's faster to scale up. So as Tesla goes into the next phase of vehicle production ramping, that if we can continue to buy affordable cells from suppliers and we're able to meet all of the vehicle production goals that we have, I think Tesla will not necessarily, I think they would prefer to buy these cells if possible rather than manufacture them in-house unless they don't meet performance specifications or if they're too expensive. But having the dry cathode process solved means that there's a much quicker path to in-house cell production ramping, that you your buildings are smaller, you're using less, all these things that we just talked about mean that it's just so much easier to say, hey, we're going to go add another 100 gigawatt hours worth of battery production. And I mean, you can see this in the picture from, it's been a while back, where they showed, this is the existing size of Giga Nevada, and this is, to produce 100 gigawatt hours. And then we're going to add just this one little postage stamp sized area next to it. Oh, and that's going to be another 100 gigawatt hours. And you can really infer from that just how much easier, once all of this is solved, which it's there are good ways of the way to fully solving this. We still haven't ramped up cathode production, so there's going to be things probably over the next 6, 12, potentially even 18 months, that as we go from, okay, now we've finally got the machines that really work doing cathode, to now we are manufacturing hundreds of gigawatt hours worth of that cathode every year. There will be some new interesting engineering challenges that pop up along that process. But once we have gotten to that first milestone of now we're producing 100 gigawatt hours of cathode a year, then to go from there to, hey, we're just going to repeat that 10 more times, becomes much easier. Like that first initial push to get all the way to production ramp of the cathode, once we solve that, then like sky's the limit on battery production. And then you start looking back at the other limiting factors of, can you source enough raw materials, can you get them from places where the supply chain is resilient, and especially to continued geopolitical risks. So it's just fun to see, even though this has taken so much longer since Battery Day than people have expected, for Tesla to execute on bringing this technology to market, and doing so ahead of the biggest, like all of the big battery companies have known about this since it was announced back in 2018, 2019. And they haven't just been like, a lot of the legacy OEMs are about, well, maybe if that ever becomes real, we'll think about possibly beginning to start something that will take 10 years from there. They have been working towards trying to figure out, okay, how can we match this? Because it is just a fundamentally more efficient and effective way to manufacture batteries. And so we hear, LG Chem has plans to start production of this in 2028. I'm sure Panasonic has, like, Jordan assumes that every major battery manufacturer is planning to implement this process in some form or factor as soon as possible. Some of them are more public about those plans than others. So to see Tesla getting close to crossing the finish line first means that they have gone head to head with the world's leading scientists and businessmen that are in this specific field, and they are coming out ahead. And so it goes back to Elon's famous saying, we do the impossible, but we deliver it late, and that's their specialty. But late for Tesla is still miles ahead of other companies, and that is to the benefit of Tesla shareholders in a largely positive way.
Well, I would add to that real quick that there's, well, if the cathode is still ramping, if the dry electrode process isn't ironed out, what does this mean for the ramp of the Cybertruck? And I would remind everyone that LG has their 4680 factory. It is still slated to go live this month. LG knows batteries. They know what they're doing. And that means that the supply of batteries can increase from just what Tesla's own in-house capacity can provide. And what if they produce even more? What if they produce far more batteries, more than they could ever put in Cybertrucks? Well, that's just great news, because we know Texas is capable of building Model Ys with 4680. And if they're going to be, they could switch all of them over to that again. And that would free up supply in Nevada of 2170s to go into perhaps Fremont cars that are currently using Chinese batteries. Some of the standard range vehicles are using Chinese batteries, or they could put them into the Semi, which uses a lot. It uses like 10, 11 cars worth of batteries, maybe even 12 cars worth of batteries. And it's tricky. Do you really want to give up 10, 12 cars worth of batteries to make one semi? Well, if batteries are not a constraint, then yes. And LG has got a factory in Japan, I think, China, Korea, that is building the 4680s, and they will soon have the Arizona factory making them as well. So there's not going to be a constraint on that front.
Yeah. Oh, Joe, were you gonna say something?
No, I was just, well, I mean, that's incredible, right? Just to think about the how we've been watching this company, and just to think about where it was even just a year ago to where it is, and potentially to where it could go. It's just staggering. Like Optimus batteries, you know what I mean? Like everything is just going to be pretty wild.
Could you like repeat the last 30 seconds, Joe? You like went alien technology on us.
I heard him just fine, actually.
Oh, really? It must be the Starlink. Okay.
Uh-oh.
Shh.
Well,
All right,
first Elon lies about 5 minutes becoming an hour. Now this.
I know, it must be my connection. I'm sorry. Okay. But yeah, no, I think so sorry if I'm gonna repeat anything that Joe said, but yeah, I think the big thing is that, you know, Tesla, you know, we all know this. So this is kind of more of a summarization of what pretty much has been said. It's like Tesla just they're constantly just taking whatever they need to do, and they're not ever okay with the current process. They are willing to work with extreme rigor to make sure that they are working as efficiently as possible, even if it can save them several dollars. I mean, I've heard insane stories where they were building the Model 3 and they were like, hey, your job is to go find us how to save $10. And I've talked to engineers who would do that. And so things like this, obviously, we know Tesla's is notoriously late, but they're a really small team. And so just hearing from y'all about the amount of space in the factories and, you know, storage and all that other stuff that they could potentially save from this, you know, they're going to repurpose that to help them work even more efficiently. So I'm personally really excited for this breakthrough, and I was cool. It was just cool geeking out, just listening to both of you guys talk and stuff. So I'm going to pass it to Joe on this next one.
So yeah, this came out, and I thought this was very interesting. Like, well, not only did they make 10 million freaking drive units, right? But the goal, like Elon says here, is to do one every second. Right now, they're doing one every 5 seconds, and that's just a staggering rate of efficiency for manufacturing. I would like Brian to go into that.
Yeah. So there's so let's take the cynical approach. Well, some of the cars have 2 motors. The semi has 3. That means only 3 to 5 million vehicles have been made. Well, we know that a whole lot of vehicles have been sold with 1 motor. So we're talking good numbers here. It was pointed out that, wait a minute, with this math, does that mean we're already north of like a 3 million run rate? Is that what we're looking at now based on the 1 second calculate or the 5 second calculation? So these drivetrains are made in Nevada. They may also be made in a second location in the U.S. They've been made in the past in Fremont. They're being made in Berlin. They're being made in Shanghai. And you know what the volumes are on, well, certainly Shanghai is north of 1 million already. You got to consider a lot of those are dual motor. That puts you at a 1.5 million drive units just out of there, even if it's only half of them that are dual motor. These are amazing, complicated devices that work really well. The big thing on that is, you know, we've got to keep driving the cost and weight down, and economies of scale help with that. And what I'm really curious about is to see when the robotaxi or compact comes out. So let's look at the requirements of a robotaxi. Do you need breakneck 0 to 60 on a taxi? Please no. I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't need dual motor. I need I need, if I need dual, it's for traction, but the traction's pretty good already. So I think they can introduce a much more efficient and lightweight motor. There was talk at at the event to say that, well, we would also be able to eliminate the rare earth minerals used in the current batteries, which are all performance tuned, really. Even the economical ones are very high performance. So we can use cheaper materials and a simpler process and make them more quickly and cheaply. And that's going to be the real key moving forward into the remember what he said, the next phase is all about extreme scale. So when I see people say, oh, they should make RVs, yeah, people would love them, but not enough people. We need to focus on extreme scale. And if you can get a platform that can do a bunch of different things in one, sell a pickup truck with no bed sort of thing that like Ford and GM and others do, maybe do that. That could allow better scaling. But for now, it would be more reasonable to start where the biggest dollar signs are, the highest volume units are, and the most disruption in terms of legacy thinking, really. Because a lot of taxis sit idle all night because they have one owner or one driver. And a robotaxi is one owner, one driver, but they don't take breaks and they don't go to sleep and they don't text and drive, as far as I know. So yeah, the 10 million, it's a great number. I look forward to the next 10 million, and I think we're going to see it happen a lot quicker this time.
Yeah, it's incredible to see what they're doing and how fast they're ramping. I mean, all right, the next other update was the semi factory. So they're continuing to just build out this semi factory, and I know that I live in I live in the Bay, and so I'll see. Well, Joe sees even more of them in the Central California because there's a whole Frito-Lay, warehouses out there. But they're driving all of these semi battery, or they're driving all the batteries pretty much from Reno. I don't want to say they're all coming in on the semis, but they're doing tons of testing, bringing in these batteries from there. So the good thing is too, is like, obviously there's a lot of crazy extreme weather in Lake Tahoe in that area. So they are being able to do some really good, I think, testing on this. So, building the machine that builds the machine. So shout out to Zangler for being our Giga Nevada factory drone shooter. So, but yeah, this is awesome. I think they just continue to just make more and more progress.
And on that, I will be tracking that. I did have a conversation with him yesterday. He's on vacation right now. So when he comes back next week, we're going to be in about week and a half, we're going to be doing an interview. But before that, I'm already putting together my tracker. So we will have the weekly excitement of watching factory construction once again. And I say that half sarcastically. It is my idea of fun.
All right, I'm going to pass this one to Joe. This is the Tesla China numbers.
This is actually Brian's slide. Brian wanted to add this.
I added it, but you can kick it off.
Well, I'll just say this real quick, because there's always a lot of hubbubaloo about what's happening in China and how it's not working out or whatever. And these are all people who don't live in China who say these things, just like all the people who don't own Cybertrucks, would never buy one and have all the ins and outs about the problems of the Cybertruck. I think this is just, you have to really realize like what's happening, looking at the sales of like some of their competition and the prices of those vehicles versus what Tesla has, I think is what's missed. I think people don't realize like what Tesla's doing is far more critical and way more impressive once you look at the fact that BYD and the Seal, and like these vehicles that are like less than 20 grand, like, and Tesla's outselling them. I mean, that's just impressive. But yeah, Brian, go ahead.
So not only is Tesla outselling those much cheaper cars, they're doing so at a greater margin. At one point, I'd pointed out that Tesla's margin on Model Ys sold in China, the margin alone was greater than the entire retail cost of the number 2 vehicle at the time, the Wuling Mini. And how on earth are you going to make money that way? It doesn't make any sense. Oh no, I hurt myself. Oh, didn't notice. But the I'm very
Everyone stop.
sleepy. I just got back. But the thing on that on those production numbers is I still see people saying, guys, BYD is coming and they're coming fast. And I say, back up and look at the numbers. They're huge in China, where their cars are actually $10,000-$20,000. Once you export them, once you pay those export fees, the flooring cost of the capital needed to actually keep a vehicle on your books for the time it takes to deliver them, that's real money. Then you've got your import duties, your shipping costs, all that. It's going to add up. And by the time these $11,000 cars get to Brazil or Mexico, they're already $18,000 to $20,000. And then you're saying, well, at 11, I was very excited about this rickety golf cart. And the $11,000 one it's a very, very much a budget vehicle. But at 20,000, well, for not that much more, I could get a Model 3. All of a sudden the value prospect falls apart. And if you look at the European market, in Germany, BYD's market share is less than 1%. They've been in that market for almost 2 years. They can't sell cars. In Mexico, they are the biggest non-Tesla EV. EVs are not big in Mexico, but Tesla has the number 1 spot of the people who aren't selling EVs really. And you look at BYD, the entire time I was in Monterey, I saw 1 on the street. And for the other brands, the Chiris, the GACs, the JACs, the SAICs, the BAICs, I saw a grand total of 0 of them on the road. And it's because they've got them in the showrooms. Nobody's buying them. But even though Tesla is quite expensive for that market, they are still the best deal. And so it's not surprising to me that Tesla's numbers are still growing. And especially when you add to it all the manufacturers who are backing down from their ambitions. Turns out, who would have seen this coming? GM is not going to be selling 1 million EVs next year across 30 different models. Who could have predicted that apart from everyone alive? So there's room to grow. And I suspect that Shanghai is going to run at full steam, even if they can't sell them all, because of the impending Juniper update coming at the end. I suspect in Q4 they'll start changing over the tooling so that they can launch next year and fulfill Elon's word that it's not coming this year.
Hans, you want to? Sorry,
Yeah, there was one additional piece from, I think, Roland's the actual post in the text part, that it's partially, or one of the things that's encouraging in all of this is to see what looks to be the effect of the buying down of the interest rates on demand for Teslas. And and I've seen continued efforts on Tesla's part to do that in other areas of the world as well. And so I think that the demand question marks that all of the analysts try to bring up all the time, I think we are seeing just continued strength on the demand side, and that interest rate is such a huge piece, as Elon has always said, and it's encouraging to see Tesla being willing to use that as one of the levers a little bit more, and seeing the effectiveness of it. And hopefully they will continue to be able to do that moving forward to just support strong demand for selling the vehicles.
Yeah, with that, I might as well just jump into that slide. So with interest, I mean, the Tesla North America put this out, 2% or 1.99 APR financing now available for Model 3 long range and performance trims. Applies to all new orders before 8/31, and you must take delivery before 9/30. I mean, if you haven't driven the new Model 3, even if it's the performance, I mean, this is such an amazing car, especially when you compare it on the, whether it applies to the tax credits, which it can. It is probably one of the best vehicles, for best bang for your buck. It's an amazing car, made super well. The range is absolutely just amazing. But just everything, it's night and day from the previous one, in my opinion. Especially when I've driven it. Like if if I was in the market for a smaller car and something, this would be the car to get. Obviously, I have the truck now, but I thought they did an amazing job with that. And obviously, as you mentioned, with the interest, they're just able to make sure that it's able to make sure they continue to move them. One other thing too. So actually, this is not something that quite close up to you, Brian, but our friend Matthew DR posted some insane things like about, I think, all the stuff happening in Washington. So as of today, qualifying Washington state residents can now lease a Tesla for $0 down and insanely low payments. So you can literally rent a Model 3 for $0 down, $127, or Model Y for $207. So that is like insane. Yeah, go ahead.
That is insane. And I did see this and I looked through it. The only catch is that your income has to be below a certain amount. I think it's 50, 60,000 for an individual, maybe 10 or 20,000 higher for a couple or with kids. But that's nice because there's a lot of people who have lower incomes who don't qualify for the 7,500 because they don't pay 7,500 in taxes. This is aimed squarely at them. When you lease a vehicle, the leasing company, whoever leases it, qualifies for the full 7,500. They just do. So that comes off your capitalization. It's Washington State's incentive, I don't remember if it's 5,000 or what it is, but it's very generous, and it comes off the top as well. So that makes it that gives you prices like these. Now, you said it's the Model 3 refresh is better, in my opinion. It's not an opinion, man. It's objective. It is a fact. It is a reality. I had a Model 3 as a service loaner, not a new one, an old one. And it's a fun car. It's just like the Y. It's just as easy as the Y, but it feels so much sportier and it's just fun. And then I got to drive the Highland at an event in Washington with the Owners Club in Bellevue, and then I got to take one out on the Autobahn with Jan from Tesla Fix, and his is a rear-wheel drive unit. It's not but to him, he's like out there waiting for the speed limit to open up because there's a Ferrari there, and I want to make him feel silly. And of course, by the time the speed limit opened up, that guy was already gone because he can afford tickets. But it is smoother. It is as smooth or smoother than the Model Y. It is the quietest Tesla sedan ever made. It is second only to, really, I would say, the Cybertruck in terms of cabin noise, and it might even be just as good. It's a fantastic car. It's got 2 subwoofers from the factory. It sounds amazing, and I was expecting it to come out, 10,000, 20,000 more than the old one, and it didn't. It's a better car that's just as cheap to buy and cheaper to manufacture. And this is the problem with trying to catch up with Tesla, is they are a moving target. And if you benchmark if you buy a Tesla Model Y, tear it down, benchmark it, we're going to make exactly as good of a car, exactly as cheap, but it's going to take us 3 to 5 years to do it. You're 3 to 5 years behind, and that is not a position you want to be in against the likes of Tesla.
Yeah, you see that with like Neo and Xiaopeng and a few of these others that took that route. Like, I'm pretty sure they benchmarked Model 3s and even some Model Ys, and they're just late to the game by doing that. I think Sandy had said something about that. Like, man, you got to look forward. You really can't look in the rear view like that.
Well, another podcast done, with a new look. And I mean, man, we went deep into it's funny how week over week and how things the dynamics of the pod are going to change. We'll go deeper and dive. I mean, so yeah, either way, just super thankful for Hans and Brian. They're both tagged. Their channels are tagged in YouTube. If you're watching there, they're tagged on X. If you're on Facebook, make sure you go find their channels as well. But or even Instagram, make sure you go find their channels. But thank you again, Hans and Brian. I'm looking forward to many more episodes. Thank you for Joe for the deck. I know you had a lot going on yesterday, but thank you for that.
Yeah, what a pleasure. And good to see Hans again. I haven't hung out with you in ages, it feels like.
Yeah.
I hang out with
Really
Hans
enjoyed it.
every time I'm in Austin.
Mhm.
Next year at the Takeover, we'll have to make sure we make a time slot for the beat if you guys come. But I'll have to remember that when we're planning. A lot of times it's more of like, we need one more time slot. Where does it go? For speakers and stuff like that. But all that to say, thank you again for supporting the podcast. Please, again, patronize Hans and Brian, and even obviously the Lone Wolf Takeover survivor. Joe made it through this year, and we will see you all next week. Have a good week, everyone. All right, thank you guys. That was
All
definitely
right.
yeah, it was